The night the snow didn't stop. This happened during the winter of 2017, and it's one of those things I still think about whenever the weather gets bad enough that everything outside goes quiet. At the time, I was living alone in a small rental house just outside a rural town in northern Minnesota. It wasn't deep wilderness, but it was isolated enough that the nearest neighbor was about half a mile away. Trees on all sides. One long gravel driveway that curved out of sight before connecting to the main road. I worked nights doing IT support remotely, so my sleep schedule was already messed up. Winter made it worse. Days blurred together when everything outside looked the same, white, gray, and dead silent. The night this happened, a blizzard warning had been issued earlier that day. Heavy snowfall, high winds, whiteout conditions. The kind of storm where they tell you not to drive unless it's an emergency. By midnight, the snow was already piling up against my windows. The wind made the house creak in ways I wasn't used to yet. Not scary creaks, just old house noises. I had a space heater running and a lamp on in the living room, trying to make it feel less empty. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard the first knock. It was soft, not urgent. Just 3 slow taps on the front door. I froze. No one should have been out there. The road would have been nearly impossible to drive by then, and walking in that snow would have been brutal. I told myself it was the wind. Snow hitting the door, something expanding or contracting from the cold. Then it happened again. 3 knocks, same rhythm. I stood up and walked toward the door, stopping a few feet back. I didn't turn on the porch light. I didn't open the door. I just stood there listening. Nothing. I went back to the couch, trying to calm myself down. About 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a weather alert. Visibility near 0. Travel strongly discouraged. That's when I heard footsteps, not on the porch, in the snow. Slow, uneven steps crunching their way up my driveway. My heart started racing. I moved to the window and peeked through the curtain just enough to see outside. At first, all I saw was blowing snow illuminated by my porch light. Then a shape moved through it. A person. They were hunched over, arms tight to their sides, moving slowly like each step took effort. They weren't wearing a winter coat, just a dark hoodie, the hood pulled tight around their face. I remember thinking, they're going to freeze out there. They reached the porch and stopped directly in front of the door. I couldn't see their face, just a dark shape where their head should be. Then they knocked again, this time harder. I didn't answer. I should have called the police. I know that now, but at the time, my brain was stuck between 2 thoughts. What if they really need help? And what if opening the door is a mistake? I called out through the door, "Can I help you?" The person didn't answer right away. Then quietly they said, "My car broke down." Their voice sounded wrong. Not creepy, not obviously threatening. Just flat. Like someone reading a line without emotion. I asked where their car was. They said, "Down the road." I asked why they weren't wearing a coat. They paused for a long time before answering. I left it in the car. That made no sense. But again, snowstorm, panic, people do dumb things. I told them I'd call for help. "No," they said quickly. Too quickly. "Please don't." That's when the fear kicked in properly. I asked why. Another pause. Then they said, "I just need to warm up." I looked down at the deadbolt on my door, looked back at the shadow through the frosted glass. Something about the situation felt staged, like they weren't as desperate as they were pretending to be. I said, "I can call roadside assistance for you." The person leaned closer to the door. Their forehead bumped the glass lightly, leaving a faint smudge. "I don't want them," they said. "I want you." That was enough. I told them to leave. I said it clearly, firmly. I said I was calling the police. They didn't move. Instead, they knocked again, this time on the side window next to the door. Tap, tap, tap. Then they started walking, not away, around the house. I heard footsteps crunching slowly along the wall beneath my living room window. I backed away, heart pounding, and turned off the lamp. The room went dark except for the glow of snow reflecting through the windows. I crouched down and peeked just above the window sill. They were standing inches from the glass. Head tilted slightly, like they were listening. Then they did something I wasn't expecting. They smiled. I could see it clearly through the window. A wide smile that didn't reach their eyes. They raised a hand and pressed it flat against the glass. Their fingers were red and stiff from the cold. Then they knocked. 3 taps. I moved quietly to the hallway and locked myself in the bedroom. I grabbed my phone and finally called 911, whispering like that mattered. While I was on the call, I heard the back door handle jiggle. Once, twice, then stop. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way but warned it could take time due to the storm. I asked her to stay on the line. Then everything went silent. No footsteps. No wind against the house. Nothing. Minutes passed, then I heard something new. Scraping. Coming from above, I realized with a sick feeling that the sound was on my roof. Heavy weight shifting slowly like someone crawling. The dispatcher asked if I could see anything. I whispered that someone was on my roof. She went quiet for a second, then told me to stay in the bedroom and keep the line open. Then the scraping stopped, and right above my head I heard a soft thump, like something settling into place. Then another sound. Knocking, not on the door, on the ceiling. 3 taps, evenly spaced. I started crying without realizing it. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep quiet. Then the tapping moved. From the ceiling above my bed to the wall beside me, like whatever it was repositioning itself. The dispatcher suddenly spoke louder. She said officers were pulling into my driveway. Almost immediately after she said that, the tapping stopped. Everything stopped. I stayed in that room until the police knocked and announced themselves. When I opened the door, the house felt empty again. Cold. Still. The officers searched the property. They found footprints in the snow circling the house, leading up to every window. They also found footprints on the roof. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. There were no footprints leading away, none back down the driveway, none into the trees, none anywhere. Just a mess of tracks around my house and then nothing. Like whoever it was had simply vanished into the storm. One officer asked me something before they left. He said, "Did they try to get you outside?" I nodded. He frowned and said, "That's good, because we've had a few reports like this." I asked him what he meant. He hesitated, then said, "People letting strangers in during storms." I asked what happened to them. He didn't answer. He just told me to stay somewhere else until the snow cleared. I moved out a month later, and every winter when the snow gets heavy and the world goes quiet, I think about those knocks, and I wonder how many people opened their doors that night because they didn't want to be rude. The radio channel that wasn't mine. This happened in January of 2019, and it's the reason I don't drive with the radio off anymore when it's snowing. Back then, I was 23 and working a warehouse job about 40 minutes from where I lived. It was decent pay, but the shifts were brutal, 3 p.m. to 1 a.m. Most nights I'd leave work exhausted, running on caffeine and autopilot, just trying to get home without falling asleep at the wheel. Winter made the commute worse. The roads out there weren't major highways. It was mostly county roads and back routes that cut through farmland and patches of woods. During the day, it was fine, but at night, especially in snow, it felt like driving through an empty TV channel. Just dark, flickering lines of trees and the occasional reflective sign. The night this happened, the forecast said light snow. It lied. By the time I clocked out at 1 a.m., it was coming down heavy. Not a full blizzard, but enough that the air looked thick and your headlights didn't reach as far as they should. The parking lot was already dusted white, and my car had that crunchy layer of snow on the windshield that makes the wipers complain. I started the car, let it warm up, and waited a minute while the defroster cleared the glass. I always drive with something on, music, a podcast, anything, because silence late at night makes you sleepy. But that night, for some reason, I didn't turn the radio on. I just drove. The first 10 minutes were normal. Snow, darkness, empty road. Then I noticed headlights behind me, far back at first. Just 2 faint dots in the mirror. I didn't care. Cars are cars. But after a few miles, the headlights were still there. Not passing, not falling back, just following at a steady distance. I told myself maybe we were both just being cautious because of the snow. Then the headlights turned off, and the car stayed behind me. That was the first time I felt a real jolt of fear, because on a dark county road in snowfall, driving with your lights off isn't normal. It's either someone drunk or someone trying not to be seen. I sped up a little, not dramatically, just enough to test it. The shadow behind me sped up too. I took the next right turn I didn't need to take onto a narrower road that would loop back around to the main route. A dumb move, but I wanted to see if they'd follow. They did. Still no headlights. Just a darker shape in the mirror, keeping the same distance like it was tethered to me. At that point, my hands were sweating inside my gloves. I kept glancing between the road and the mirror, trying not to overreact, but also trying not to be naive. Then my radio turned on by itself. The display lit up. Static burst through the speakers. I actually flinched because it was so sudden. Then the static cleared and a voice came through. Not a music station, not a DJ, just a man's voice, low and calm like it was already mid-sentence. "Yeah, I see you." My stomach dropped. I reached for the radio knob and turned it down fast. The voice kept talking even as the volume lowered, like it was being carried under the sound. "Keep going." I turned the radio off. Silence for 2 seconds. Then the radio clicked back on by itself. Same static, then the same voice, clearer now, like it was right next to my ear. "Don't turn it off." I stared at the dashboard, heart pounding so hard it felt like it was in my throat. My brain tried to explain it. Maybe it was a nearby CB radio bleeding into my car speakers, maybe some weird frequency interference. Maybe I was so tired I was hallucinating. But the timing felt intentional. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The car behind me was closer now. Still no headlights, just a shape, matching every move. The voice continued, calm, almost conversational. "Snow's coming down harder. Don't stop out here." I didn't respond, obviously. Who would? I grabbed my phone and tried to call my friend, but I had no service. Just that no signal message that always shows up in the worst places. The voice on the radio chuckled softly. "Yeah," it said. "That won't work." I felt my whole body go cold. I turned the radio knob again, trying to change stations. It didn't matter what I turned it to. FM, AM, different frequency. It stayed on that same channel. Same voice, same calm tone. "You don't need to do all that," it said. "Just drive." I tried to keep breathing steady. My mouth felt dry. My hands were locked on the steering wheel. The road ahead dipped into a tree line. The snow got thicker, the world narrowing to my headlights and the tunnel of branches overhead. Then my high beams flicked on by themselves. Then off. Then on again. Like someone was playing with them. I whispered, "What the hell?" even though no one could hear me. The voice responded immediately. "I can't see you when you do that." That's when I realized with a sick twist in my gut, this wasn't random interference. This was directed. At me. I was starting to panic. You know how panic feels when you're driving? Like you're trapped in motion. Like stopping is dangerous, but so is continuing. Then the voice said something that made my blood turn to ice. "Your back left brake light is out." I stared forward, frozen. Because that wasn't something you could guess easily. Not in snow. Not from far away. Unless you were right behind me. Or unless you'd already checked my car. The voice continued. "Been out a while. You didn't notice." I swallowed hard, trying to keep it together. Up ahead, I saw a set of taillights in the distance. Another car. The first car I'd seen in 20 minutes. Relief hit me so hard, it almost made me laugh. I accelerated slightly, trying to close the gap. The shadow behind me accelerated too. The voice on the radio got a little sharper. "Don't do that." I ignored it. I drove faster, staying careful on the snowy road, but pushing it. The taillights ahead grew closer, and then, like something out of a nightmare, the car ahead turned off. Not turned away. Turned off its lights. Total darkness. The taillights vanished, like it was never there. I blinked hard, thinking maybe it had turned onto a side road I hadn't seen. But there were no side roads. Just trees. The voice on the radio laughed again, softer. "Thought you had a friend." I felt sick. The car behind me was close now. I could see the outline more clearly. An SUV maybe, or a larger sedan. Still no headlights. Still tracking me. I considered slamming my brakes, forcing it to pass, but in snow that would have been suicide. I would have spun out, and then I'd be stuck. The voice said, "You're doing good. Just keep it straight." I started looking for any turnoff. Any driveway. Any lit area, anything. Then I saw it. A gas station sign up ahead, faint but real. A small place, the kind with 2 pumps and a single building. The sign glowed through the snow like a lighthouse. I exhaled, almost crying from relief. I turned into the gas station lot, tires crunching over fresh snow. The building lights were on. A couple cars were parked near the front. It wasn't crowded, but it wasn't empty either. I pulled under the brightest light and sat there breathing hard, staring at the mirror. The car behind me slowed and kept going. It didn't turn in. It just rolled past the entrance like it had never been following me at all. The radio went quiet. No static, no voice, just the normal hum of the engine. I sat there for a full minute trying to calm down. Then I looked down at the radio display. The station number wasn't a normal FM frequency. It was just 3 dashes, like the radio didn't recognize what it had been tuned to. I got out of the car and walked toward the building, wanting to be near other people. I didn't even care if I looked crazy. Inside, the clerk looked half asleep behind the counter. I bought a bottle of water just to have an excuse to be there. While he rang me up, he said, casually, "You all right?" I hesitated, then asked, "Did you see a car follow me in?" He frowned. "No." I pointed toward the road. A dark SUV or something. No headlights. He shook his head slowly. "Haven't seen anyone come through in a while." I felt my stomach drop again, because I had watched it follow me. I had seen it in my mirror. There was no way. I walked back outside anyway. My breath fogged in the cold. Snow hissed against the lot. I looked at my car, and that's when I saw it. On my back windshield, written in the thin layer of snow, were 3 words. Neat, like someone had traced them with a finger. "Turn it on." I stared at it so long my eyes started watering. Then my phone buzzed. 1 bar of service finally appeared, and a single text came through from an unknown number. "Next time, don't change the station." I didn't drive home the normal way after that. I stayed on main roads, near lights, near traffic. I kept the radio on low the whole time, tuned to a local music station. Nothing else happened that night. But every time it snows now and I'm driving alone, I keep thinking about the voice, how calm it was, how it knew details it shouldn't have known, and how it sounded less like someone trying to scare me and more like someone giving directions, like I wasn't the one driving. I was just the one inside the car. The Cabin Guest Book. This happened in February of 2021, and it's the reason I won't rent cabins in the winter anymore, no matter how cozy they look in the photos. My girlfriend at the time, Maya, found the place online. It was one of those small A-frame cabins advertised as romantic and secluded, about 2.5 hours away from the city. It had a hot tub, a fireplace, and a ridiculous amount of string lights inside. The listing said there were neighboring cabins, but privacy was guaranteed by the surrounding woods. We'd both been stressed and wanted a weekend away. Nothing crazy. Just snow, quiet, and no notifications. We arrived on a Friday around 6 p.m., right when it was getting dark. Snow had been falling most of the day, and the road up to the cabin was packed down but still slick. There were tall pines on both sides, and everything looked like it had been dipped in white paint. The cabin itself was exactly what it looked like online. Cute, clean, warm. It even smelled like pine cleaner and firewood, which sounds fake, but I remember it because it made me relax immediately. The host had left a lockbox code. No greeting, no check-in, just let yourself in. Inside, there was a little welcome note on the counter with the Wi-Fi password, a list of instructions, and a line that said, "Please sign the guest book before you leave." The guest book was a small leather-bound notebook on the coffee table. I didn't look at it right away. We unpacked, started the fireplace, and made dinner. By 9 p.m., we were in that cabin mindset where you start whispering even though there's no one around. It was quiet. Really quiet. Really quiet. Snow quiet. Around 10:30, we got in the hot tub. It was out on the back deck, facing the woods. The water was steaming, and snowflakes kept landing on the surface and melting instantly. It should have been perfect, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Not in a paranormal way, more like the obvious way. Like, if you're sitting in a lit hot tub at night, you're basically a display. I told Maya that, and she laughed and said, "Who's going to be out here?" I shrugged. I don't know. Just feels weird. We stayed out for maybe 20 minutes and went back inside. Before bed, I checked the front door lock out of habit. It was locked. Deadbolt set. Good. At around 2 a.m., I woke up because I had to use the bathroom. The cabin was dark except for a small nightlight in the kitchen. Maya was asleep beside me. I walked down the ladder steps from the loft quietly and went to the bathroom. When I came out, I noticed the living room looked different. At first, I couldn't place it. Then I realized the guest book was open. It had been closed when we went to bed. I remembered because Maya had set her phone on top of it while charging. Now it was open to the middle, lying flat on the coffee table. I stood there staring at it, half asleep, trying to decide if I was imagining it. I walked closer. On the open pages there was fresh handwriting. Not ours. A single line written neatly in black ink. "You should lock the back door too." My stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling. I looked around the cabin, suddenly wide awake. Nothing moved, no sound, just the faint crackle of dying firewood. I went straight to the back door. The cabin had a sliding glass door leading to the deck. It was locked, but there was no deadbolt, just the latch. I checked it twice. Locked. Still, my hands were shaking. I pulled the curtain back a little and looked out. The deck was covered in a fresh layer of snow, except for footprints, barely visible, but there. A set of boot prints leading up the steps to the deck and stopping right in front of the glass door. I stared at them, brain trying to bargain. Maybe those were ours from earlier, but no, ours would have been messy, scattered. These were straight, deliberate, like someone walked up, stood there, and left. I woke Maya up. She sat up, confused, annoyed, until she saw my face. "What?" she whispered. I didn't want to say it out loud because it sounded insane. I just pointed. She climbed down and looked at the guest book. Her expression changed immediately. "Is this a joke?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said, "but someone was on the deck. We didn't call the host. We didn't call the police. I know we should have. But it was 2 a.m. in the woods, and we were both in that panicked state where you just want to pretend the problem isn't real because admitting it makes it worse. So we did the stupid thing. We checked the cabin, closet, bathroom, under the bed, behind the shower curtain. Nothing. Then we pushed the couch against the sliding door, locked the front door again, and sat in the living room with the fireplace poker beside us like that was going to help. We stayed like that for an hour. Nothing happened. Eventually we convinced ourselves it was probably the host. Maybe they came to check something and realized we hadn't locked the deck door. Maybe they wrote that as a helpful note. But then why not just text us? Why write it in the guest book? Why leave footprints? Around 3:30, the fire burned down and the cabin got colder. Maya fell asleep on the couch. I dozed, sitting upright. Then I heard the sound that snapped me awake, a soft, sliding sound, like glass moving. I looked toward the back door. The curtain shifted slightly, like something brushed against it. The latch clicked. It was subtle, but I heard it. And then the sliding door moved. Not fully open, just an inch. A thin black line appeared between the door and frame. I stood up so fast I almost tripped. I grabbed the poker and stepped forward. The line widened. Slowly, like someone was pulling it from outside with controlled pressure. Then it stopped. A voice came through the gap, quiet and calm. "You should have locked it." I froze. That voice didn't sound like someone struggling in the cold. It sounded like someone standing comfortably on the other side. I whispered, "Who are you?" No answer. The door slid another inch. The couch we'd pushed against it scraped the floor slightly. Maya woke up, gasping. She looked at the door, then at me, and her face went pale. I raised the poker and yelled, "Get the hell away!" There was a pause. Then the voice said, "Write your name in the book." I felt sick. I said, "No." The voice stayed calm, almost patient. Everyone does. The door slid again, another inch. The couch slid with it. Maya started crying, whispering, "Call someone, call someone." I backed away and grabbed my phone. No service, not even one bar. The Wi-Fi was still on, but my phone wouldn't load anything. No calls, no texts, nothing. Then the voice said, closer now, like it leaned toward the gap, "You're going to leave, but you won't be the last ones here." And then, right beside the sliding door, something tapped the glass. 3 taps, evenly spaced. I didn't know what to do. My brain was locked in fight or flight, but there was nowhere to run. Snow outside, no car keys in my pocket, no service. So I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed the guest book. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I flipped to the last page, the most recent entries. That's when I noticed something. Most of the names were normal. Couples, families, little notes like "loved the hot tub" and "great weekend." But every few pages there were entries written in the same neat handwriting as the note. Not names, just dates. And beneath the dates a single line repeated again and again. Didn't lock the back door. Sometimes there was another line under it, had to remind them. I felt cold all over. Because it wasn't just one time. It wasn't just us. The door behind me creaked again. The couch slid another fraction. Maya grabbed my arm and whispered, "Please, do something." I didn't know what something was. but I opened the guest book to a blank page and held it up, hands shaking. I said louder, "What do you want?" The voice didn't hesitate. "Write your names." I stared at the page. If I wrote our names, I didn't know what that meant, but I also didn't know what would happen if I refused. So I did it. I wrote my first name, and then Maya's. The moment I finished the last letter, the scraping stopped. The door didn't slide anymore. The voice didn't speak again. Silence filled the cabin so completely it felt like pressure. We stayed awake until morning. When daylight came, we left immediately. Didn't pack neatly, didn't clean. Just grabbed our stuff and drove out while the road was still passable. At the bottom of the hill, the cell service came back. Maya wanted to call the host and scream at them, report them, do something, but I didn't. Because while we were driving, my phone buzzed. A message came through from an unknown number. Just one line, "Thank you for signing." And beneath it, a second message. "Next time, lock the back door without being told."